Raising young black boys, there's the influence of like these very prominent um masculinity influences, should we call them, right? That's there's this real loud voice of that. And then there's the education around things like race, even class, it can be important, and history and so forth. That there's a lot for boys, for young black boys to understand their place, the history that's kind of being pushed on them, these people's biases towards them, but also then this like new piece that he said is like this very, very new, because now you just go on YouTube and it will just keep feeding you more and more of the thing it thinks you want. The algorithm just feeds into you. How do you have conversations about all these kind of different aspects to life with your young boys?
Yeah, I think, well, firstly, like, I'll separate like real life and digital, because I think they're kind of two very big, very separate conversations. I think the in real life stuff is it is a minefield, but it's also easier to have those conversations because it's there, it's in front of you, it's happening. My children were introduced to racism, for example, at a very young age through not our desire, but just through outside kind of influence. And they experienced going through that very young. So they were very aware. And I think at that point, we just made the decision that we will do it age appropriately, but they can know anything that they want to know. They can ask us anything they want to ask us, and we will respond in an honest but age appropriate way. We did reading around it. We had conversations around it. Even misogyny, we have conversations around misogyny. My 8-year-old, well, he does know the term misogyny now. That when we had the conversation, we didn't necessarily use the term misogyny, but we just started off talking about like pink and blue, what that means. Can boys wear pink, girls wear blue, etc.? Yes, of course they can, because they're just colors. They actually mean nothing. And actually, on the pink and blue thing, it was only yesterday that my eldest told me he was at his friend's house yesterday morning, and they were playing, and his sister had a blue ball, and the brother had said, "No, you need to give that to my son, because you need to have the pink one." And my son actually stopped in front of their parents and said, "That was a very stereotypical and sexist thing to say." And the parents were like, yeah, you're right. Actually, you're right. That was, anyone can play with any, but he's very, and that's because we are very open with them. And we want them, because a lot of times these stereotypes are actually barriers, and they're there for a reason. They're there to stop you being who you want to be and progressing where you want to progress to. They're there to stop you being the best of who you are. So we try to get those out as much as possible. And then the digital space is something we are still tackling because it's ever evolving. But again, I have very strong and clear boundaries when it comes to my children and digital, because, like you say, the algorithm doesn't really care. You will accidentally click on something or listen to something and halfway through realize it's against your values. And then the next video will be the same thing. The next video will be the same thing. And all of a sudden you're kind of consumed with that. So my children don't have social media. They appear on my social media in a very managed kind of way. They don't have access to their own social media, apart from my eldest has WhatsApp, and that is policed very heavily by me and my wife, because it just opens up the whole world, access to anything, any information. And we see it even at the young age of 11, which is what my eldest is. Like, some of his friends have accessed social media, TikTok, etc., and they're creating groups, WhatsApp groups, for just boys. And it's not just for boys to support each other, like we were talking about men need support. It's just for boys so they can talk about girls. And that is at 11 years old. He's not part of that. He knows he could never even entertain being part of that, but that's happening at 11 years old. And that is a breeding ground for poison. and stuff that we don't want our children accessing. So we have very strong, but the conversations are not easy. I wish I could say, yeah, we talk, we sit around and we talk about, social media and how it's this and it's that and how you've got to have, we've got to be safe online. It doesn't go like that. It goes like, I want to be part of the WhatsApp group. Everyone else is part of the WhatsApp group. No, you're not going to be part of the WhatsApp group. This is why. But why? Nothing has happened. And it's not a come by our moment. It's a battle. It is a battle because to them, they're being left out. They're missing out on something. They're missing out on what other people are experiencing. To us, we know the dangers. So the conversation and the battle, as I call it, is ongoing, but I'm not letting my guard down with those things. It just takes one thing, one poisonous thing to get in front of them on social media or in a WhatsApp group, and you're dealing with that for a long time. The impact of that is a long one. So yeah, it's not an easy ride, man. It's not. But yeah, that's kind of what we're doing at the moment.
Yeah, and it's so hard. I'm not even anywhere near that, right? I'm just so hard because, kids are so adamant of like, I'm missing out, like so-and-so's parents let them be in there. Like, we're not talking about anything. We're just talking about sport and this, in a way that, look back to when I was younger and I used to hang around with a group of boys and we would talk about certain things and, some of it was healthy and at times it wasn't particularly healthy. And, inherently boys will not, I don't want to say boys will be boys because I don't think that's necessarily the right sentence. Like groups will form and young people are exploring themselves and what it means to be a boy, a girl, a human being, a 12-year-old. But, there's this online piece that we didn't have to deal with, which, like you said, it opens up to a world, but it opens them up to a world without, discernment. They don't have the capacity for discernment.
Absolutely.
And I guess the question for you I have is around media literacy, right? Because, you work in media, you understand how this landscape works. And I've been into some schools and talked to young boys, secondary school age about this sort of content. And one of the things I've seen multiple times is like, oh, you don't know how to like look at some content and like be discerning and go, oh, what's real, what's not real, what's underneath it. So I guess the question I have is, and this might be something you haven't done yet, you're thinking about in the future, is like, how do you teach your young boys, young children, media literacy and to start to have this discernment and questioning of the things that are the information they're receiving?
Yeah. That is ever evolving. Like my children are fortunate in the fact that I do work in it and I've worked in it for a while and I do it myself. So I've come across things and I'm aware of things that maybe other parents that don't work in that industry aren't aware of. And I never judge a parent for not knowing what they don't know, like, because it changes every single day. I don't know if you watched Adolescence, but even that, I know there's a lot of talk around that, but even that, there's one scene that I think is probably, it got overlooked, but it's one of the most prominent scenes. And that's when the dad is asking the son what certain emojis mean. And that is an example of how quickly this social media and internet culture moves, is that you can't keep up. But the way I would always tackle it and talk to anyone about tackling social media is, unfortunately, or just the online world in general, digital, is unfortunately, you're going to have to get deep in. You're going to have to throw yourself in and work stuff out and work it out for yourself. So, for example, my children now, because I work in it, they can watch, they've got certain YouTubers that they're able to watch. And they can watch those and they can say whether a video is clickbait or not. And they can say whether a scenario is a setup scenario or it's not set up. And that's because I don't necessarily work in YouTube, but I take my time to really understand what these YouTubers are doing and how that impacts me as a viewer. So things like pranks, my children know they can't just walk on the street and do a prank to someone and not necessarily get punched in the face, for example. And I have to teach them a lot of these, their specific YouTubers that they watch. They're not just random people on the street. They're people that they've picked out that know the prank is going to happen, and they set it up, and then it's a fake reaction and all of that kind of stuff. It's not necessarily, people. There are people that go out there and prank random people, but they're YouTubers that they watch. They know the setup scenarios. They know that, for example, YouTube families that have loads of money and they flaunt that on YouTube, and then your children expect 5 PS5s for their birthday and to go to Hawaii and do all of this nonsense. They know I've taught my children what those children have sacrificed, or what those families have sacrificed to be able to do that. They don't just sit around, go to school, watch what they want on TV, lie on their beds, have a lie-in on a Saturday, etc. They get up and they are filming day to night, all night. If they do something wrong, they have to do it again. They don't get downtime, and that's what they've sacrificed in their life to be able to do that. So again, they're aware of things like that. They know what's clickbait. They know what's not necessarily clickbait. So that for me is helping with their age appropriate kind of discernment at that level. Okay, I'm watching a YouTuber. He's got that money because they do this, this, and this. They, they are pranking these people, but it's not real. These people know it's going to happen. They know they're going to get slime in their face or water drenched all over them or whatever it might be. They're already prepared for that. All of those things, I think, helps their discernment, so that when they move on to the next level of their kind of social media or digital journey, they're able to take that and level it up. So with this certain misogynistic kind of character, they can start to read into, okay, he's only saying that because it'll get him more views, because it's clickbait. He knows that if he says that outrageous thing, he doesn't necessarily believe it, but he knows it'll get him paid through the TikTok creator program, for example. So it's all of those things that I'm teaching from this age, so they can take it onto the next level and the next level and the next level. But I would say parents, it's not something where you can say, oh, I've done a little bit today, I'll pat myself on the back. It's unfortunately, it's something you have to just keep on learning and be curious about. Watch, you might see screaming YouTubers or on TikTok screaming TikTokers or whatever it might be, but sit and watch it, watch it the whole way through, see what they're saying, understand what they're saying and why they're saying it. Look at things like monetization. A lot of YouTubers and TikTokers, they're doing it for cash. They don't necessarily believe the stuff they believe. They're just doing it for cash because it's a way to make money. Understand all of that stuff. That was a long-winded answer to your question, but that's kind of what my train of thought with that.
But no, it's a really powerful answer, right? Because you've obviously through your work, but you've really dived into understand the underlying mechanics and what's going on. So it's not just you guys, don't watch that, that's bad, but explaining, and you've taken understanding and then delivered that understanding to them so that they can be discerning, and that for each level of taking in media and information, they have a base level understanding of how to break something down and look at it in ways that, just be honest, grown adults don't have that level of discernment with kind of digital media.
And exactly. And on that point, I think one thing to realize off the bat is that children are not safe online. They're not safe online. They have to practice safety, but they're not safe. And if you go in with that expectation, and like you say, it's not about cutting them out of things, because of course, age appropriate, that's very important. But within that, it's not about saying no and shutting them down, because they will come across something that impacts them. They will. It's inevitable. You need to understand that. But it's about when they see that thing, what are they thinking? What do they remember from what you taught them? How do they process that information? You want to give them those tools and that basis and actively do it. Watch, like I mentioned about YouTube, we watch it with them and I'll say, why did they do that? Why do you think they did that? Why do you think that was, we'll laugh along and we'll engage with the stuff with them, but we'll also question them as we go. And we will talk about that until we all come up with an answer. We won't just kind of let it go. But yeah, I think understanding that children aren't safe online, social media companies, etc., that's not their primary goal. It's not their priority. It's about you helping them be safe online, helping them navigate their safety online.